Hello, good afternoon. It's the 12th of March, and this is your medical anthropology assignment without any unnecessary sort of backgrounds and jargon. So, ritual is a key theme or major tenet within anthropology, as anthropologists consider what it is to be human and escape the primitive, promiscuous, primeval horde. An idea stemming from the Darwinian evolutionary theory that's supported by findings of fossils evidencing evolution from a primitive state. These ideas developed along with the growth of anthropological awareness and studies, offering broad and different perspectives on social interactions, cohesions, etc. These different perspectives included Boas in 1887 and his ideas of cultural relativism, which essentially that people's beliefs and actions should be understood within the context of their own culture. Malinowski, a functional anthropologist, really championing these ideas, understanding we can't understand something without knowing what it means to those who do it. Then we had Durkheim and the sacred and the profane, as we've learnt a little bit about previously, who asserts that religion unifies beliefs and practices around the sacred, and all else is effectively profane. However, ritual is part of every culture and civilization, therefore understanding the symbolism and the symbols is very important, as ritual is stereotyped communication, similar to religion, and is used as a mechanism to cope with the unknown aspects of the world. There are different types of ritual, including cyclical rituals, which happen at a certain time, rituals of affliction, which are sort of in a response to a crisis, and finally rites of passage, such as birth rites, death rites, marriage rites, etc. Victor Turner, as discussed in previous episodes, has discussed the three stages that are universal to all ritual, which include separation, liminality, and incorporation. We won't discuss them any further today. This video today is going to analyse the beliefs and practices of healing within the Western biomedical hemisphere, as well as with the Awa people, where anthropologists have actually taken Western medicine to their society. So we're going to be looking at the role of the healer within both societies. We will then look at the ethical issues of the internationalization of the Western biomedical approaches against thinking based on magic, witchcraft and religion to medicine, considering the imposing of Western beliefs to the Awa people that we are considering. And to conclude, we'll evaluate between the two different approaches to medicine and healing. So there's a lot to fit into a short time frame today, so excuse me that I'm going to speak very quickly. Ritual, as we know, is heavily present and prominent within the European Western medical sphere. It's been impossible to validate. However, there are rumours that suggest that for new medicines to get approved, they only need to meet the threshold of beating the placebo effect, which can easily be achieved by sort of manipulating sample numbers until surpassing the needed threshold. So there's little validity in that. However, Western medicine is perceived and considered as the gold standard and scientifically rigorous, tested, and hence the most sound. Having recently interviewed actually a master's graduate from Imperial College London, who's currently undertaking a second master's and an active role with King's College, although there's clearly ritualized behaviour within the role, discussing such a role, he refuses to attach the word ritual to the unnecessarily ritualized actions required, as he believes ritual connotes something magical or some sort of spiritual association. However, even we'll discuss that, his role in a moment actually, but even looking at the role of a general practitioner, the first port of call for the public when sort of requiring medical assistance, there is sort of protracted ritualized mechanisms behind even attaining the initial assessment or meeting. One can't simply sort of call upon medical support. You have to first contact a receptionist, book an appointment, attend, wait to be called, only to be seen in a man or woman in a predetermined attire, generally including sort of a white coat. So this is protracted and ritualized process would be considered to offer a functional benefit, including reinforcing the sort of placebo stereotype behaviours that convince the mind that a beneficial sort of official intervention is about to take place. Further evidence of the ritual in Western biomedical medicine has been evidenced by Welch in 2003. Unfortunately, he takes a stance that sort of purports that anything that's non-Western healing only has value purely due to the sort of placebo effect. However, he's clearly and coherently identified in his own words here that doctor-patient interactions that are part of our healing process include many of the same motifs of ritual identified by scholars of religion and ritual elsewhere. Religion, effectively, too, being categorized now, these are my words, categorized as ritualized behavior, so just creating, again, our own understanding of the otherwise unknown. However, he too identifies the sacred space of Western healing, so hospitals or doctor surgeries, taking us through those 3 stages of ritual, with demarcated spaces, sort of taking us into the liminal stage, killing ourselves socially, effectively, to be eventually reborn post the intervention by someone who's equivalent to sort of a healer or a shaman. There are many different views sort of supporting the benefit of ritual and the functions that it serves. And I mean, once we are in a space, we are transformed from what sort of members of the public into patients. And again, in his words specifically, sort of regardless of our previous status in society, having entered these sacred spaces, we now become supplicants with a new set of expectations of what we should and should not do and how we should or should not be treated. So effectively what he's saying is we are changed through this process, and which is right. I mean, we are subjected to blood tests, pressure on heart tests, temperature tests, and things like this. Maybe given a new identity through sort of a patient number. We're conversed with in a language that's somewhat foreign and alien to us. However, we get a sense of security knowing that they're only achieving that role, so sort of post taking a Hippocratic oath and years of dedicated training. So these are sort of just some of the multitude of examples that hopefully allow you as an audience to sort of question the processes behind medical interventions we receive and that are offered in the Western biomedical structure. However, sort of the ritual, and I'm not actually, sorry, we haven't got time to talk now about the very interesting conversations that I was having, but very quickly actually. We don't really have time, but talking about the conversation quite lengthy that I had with the chap who works with testing equipment within the hospitals, he was just explaining to me how there is much ritual within even his role and the testing process and the fact that they're done in a cyclical manner. However, the tests are pointless insofar as in many layers, but effectively they wouldn't need to be done annually, because if there was an issue, it would be identified much before the annual test came up. When the test is done, it's carried out in a manner that it's almost done pointlessly, because for 3 different reasons. Number one, the way it's carried out, it doesn't test anything that wouldn't have been picked up otherwise, and it's testing for something that would mean that the machine wouldn't work. So you're testing for something that there's no point testing for it, because if you were testing, if there was a problem, you would have known it or before you're testing. Secondly, the testing is completely subjective. One of the examples he gave me is there's a scale between 0 and 3 for one of them, where if you're having to look for something and it's either a perfect circle, circular, there's something, or you can see nothing. So you can either see nothing, you can see something that's a circular shape, or you can see something that's a perfect circle. Again, completely subjective in anyone's eyes. And thirdly, then the tests are done in a way that they're fashioned to ensure that they are passed. So unless they don't pass, they will just manipulate the results again to make sure they pass. So just a quick anecdote there, just about how there is lots and lots and lots and lots of ritualized behaviour within our Western medical practices that often are overlooked and we are unaware of as patients, but they're all there in place that continues to give us that same placebic sense of beneficial intervention. As we were saying, all this ritualized sort of influence has a beneficial outcome to the patients, supported by many, including the Bassi et al. In 2001. And there's others who have also identified sort of the warm and closer sort of the doctor-patient relationship is, the more effective were at sort of the alleviating symptoms of illness. Also, there's many sort of other evidence sort of in the increased value of placebo within a space more benefiting to the mindset of the patient. I mean, the ordinary really takes significant meaning, even down to something like the sort of the colour of the pill, or the more money we've spent, or the more difficult it is to get a meeting with a person, the more likely it is to have that impact, because we believe it's going to have that more impact. We believe it's worth more. It's going to. It's more unattainable. Hence, once we achieve it, once we get it, it's going to have the best impact, and that really does play a huge role. So when we're talking about sort of placebo surgery, that they're also more valuable sort of when they're double-blinded, and often, as naturally we were just talking about, when the patient has higher faith in the treatment or the therapist. So now we've got a sort of a greater understanding of placebo and the ideas around healing and medicine, illness, etc. We're going to consider the healing practices of the Awa, or the Awa Kawilaka. They're considered sort of the last nomadic tribe of the parts of Ecuador and Colombia. Awa simply sort of means people, and they're often called Kawilia or Kawilikia, which is the name of a Colombian town near their communities. They're one of many sort of Tucson ethnic groups of the region. Sorry, my pronunciation is awful with some of these names. However, each individual group heralding from a similar mythology idea, which is that an anaconda ancestor sort of brought the ancestors of humanity to the world through a water door, which is a passage to a journey of rivers. And they started in the stomach sort of as a form of feather ornaments, and these spiritual ancestors then transformed into human beings during their journey. And once they reach the centre of the world, they sort of emerge from a hole into transformed into or travelled into their respective territories. The tale goes on. Many identify this simply as a story of migration down the river of their own ancestors, and that's how they're sort of retelling the story. However, people have also analysed it. Again, sort of the travelling down sort of a birth canal, and again, there's lots of different sort of ideas as to where this comes from. Okay, really quickly, let's just talk about the idea of what anthropology or medical anthropology is. It really seeks to investigate how other people look at healing in the body and the cause and remedy for illness and disease, as well as sort of their perceptions of these concepts. Illness effectively being defined culturally by different perceptions and experiences, whereas disease is sort of a biological health problem. However, medical anthropologists, if they were to study sort of our Western medical mannerisms, they would see it sort of socially, they would identify sort of the unjust social inequalities around our Western healthcare systems. And I mean, this is almost validated sort of by the medical pluralism that exists. Just one example of sort of cancer. I mean, there's not just chemo and radiotherapy, you have stem cell therapy, there's now gene therapy. Outside of that, there's what you would be considering holistic therapies, which are available still within our Western society, within our Western society. So really, there's vast opportunities out there for getting cures. However, it's quite funny as sort of Western medical professionals would possibly suggest that what they're offering is the gold standard. However, they're obviously disregarding the pluralism that's within their own societies, where there is such a multitude of avenues available that are offering purported healing benefits. I mean, finally, very quickly, just considering what placebo really is, it is just something that has an effect. However, the effect is a manifestation of the act of believing. Let's take an example that makes it simpler to break down, of sort of taking a tablet. The tablet isn't what's curing you. There is no chemical change created by the tablet. There might be a chemical change, but the chemical change in the brain or in the body comes from the act of taking the tablet, not as a direct chemical result of the tablet triggering an effect in the body. Simply. There we go. The Awa people have very limited numbers, estimated around 1,600 currently. They live in forests, grasslands, and semi-desert environments, and they live by hunting and growing plants for food as well as medicine. However, they also have witch doctors or shamans, some of who have assistants, and they use their knowledge passed down using the nature of the Amazon to provide their medicines, combined with spiritual powers that they channel. One of the healing rituals done by shamans from the Ecuadorian region has some very distinctive features and includes chanting and the spitting of alcohol onto sometimes the naked body of the recipient, or the body, or sometimes the naked body. At certain points, they light the alcohol, and this is done through candles that they spit through to heat the recipient's body. The shamans and the recipient both spit into a cup. And post this, stones and fragrant leaves are rubbed all around the recipient's body or beaten over it. So stones are rubbed and leaves, fragrance leaves are beaten on the recipient's body. And obviously, naturally, there's much symbolism within these ritual practices, seen as cleansing the body through purification and washing the alcohol washing with alcohol and fire. Naturally, there's a spitting out of the evil spirits and negative energies through spitting into the cup, and obviously, finally, the purification of re-entering through sort of nature and being rubbed with stones and leaves. Again, it's quite easy to identify sort of Victor Turner's three ritual stages happening here. The role of the healer within a small society is limited, however, obviously poignant. Although they use their own sort of forms of healing within the context of their own families and communities, shamans are sought out for obviously the three predominant ritual types, as we discussed earlier in the video. There are many grave issues, however, with Western interventions, naturally, medically, to these otherwise foreign societies. One poignant example with the tribe was witnessed by Memphis and Enrique in 1997. They have not gone there with any intention to offer medical assistance. However, receiving direct appeals for medical intervention, they found it ethically acceptable to themselves, considering a sort of symbiotic and mutually beneficial relationship, as well as an opportunity to assimilate themselves with the culture and tribe, to learn the language and more about the indigenous behaviours. Naturally, one of the most pertinent and obvious ethical questions raised here is why, or should people without medical experience be administering any form of medical support? Furthermore, by offering such medical support prior to any serious understanding of the culture, its structures and its nuances, they risked heavily upsetting the balance and sort of devastating the community. This could have been done through the breaking down of community bonds, by something so simple, by such a simple act that could go against one of the society's most deepest beliefs. In the case of the chicken soup cure, both anthropologists, however, did do something morally questionable. Having a patient who believed that they had been cursed, and exacerbated by the fact that people were wishing them goodbye and there were preparations almost for afterlife ceremonies happening, and Reach and Kemp falsely ceremonialized the practice of giving standardized Western medicine in the effort to give a greater chance of pain alleviation. Another sort of disgusting example of this internationalization of Western medicine is witnessed by Kensinger, who spent 7 years with the Peruvian Cashinanao, again riddled with moral complexities, initially regarding Western medicine as medically superior. The main ethical issue here lies with not aligning himself with the practitioners of the culture. Unfortunately, his experiences did result in the death of some of his patients, and this naturally adds greater weight to the ethical arguments against his interventions. However, these must be weighed against the benefits of the work he did. Through his extensive experiences, however, he did eventually learn to work alongside the witch doctor, who he learned had a deep understanding of the benefits of the natural plants available throughout his own, or curing his own fungal infection. This actually being the catalytic trigger to develop their working relationship. However, taking Western medicine into the field, especially without deep understanding of medical practices and the potency of the medicine, the potency medicine carries, along with not understanding the culture and the tribes within which it's potentially to be administered, can be heavily detrimental, and hence obviously would be ill-advised. There are too many disadvantages of Western medicine, as its very rigid way of perceiving the body. Taking an anthropological view on the body, we can understand that there are many different ways the body experiences ailments relative to the culture within which they are found. Looking even at Western biomedical hemisphere, we can evidence a marriage between psychology and the pharmaceutical industry, identifying, producing, and subsequently prescribing treatments and drugs for issues that have not existed or were not considered to exist only a few decades ago, and that are not acknowledged broadly around the globe. CCHR. The Citizens Commission on Human Rights, CCHR, is a great source of information on this. However, moving on, Western medicine is broadly naturalistic insofar as it aims to sort of rebalance the equilibrium and look at the mechanistic causes within sort of the picture that can be understood and cured via sort of scientific methods of discovery. However, the personalistic experience is found broadly outside of the Western world, predominantly sort of in small-scale societies where supernatural beings and forces are accepted as playing a role, such as religion, witchcraft, etc., magic, and so forth. Where in many cultures actually religion and medicine are very heavily tied. One of the gravest concerns actually within sort of morally studying other cultures or through an anthropological lens, whilst administering medicine, is the lack of sort of pre-existing bodies of knowledge in supporting and understanding the cultures we might be sort of devastating potentially. Beyond this is the ability to sort of view the existing medical practices from a non-biased lens and not exerting sort of any derogatory assumptions as inferior, and not blinding us to the value of the personalistic experience as identified quite well by the case of the chicken soup, where they personalised the system of sort of offering the medicine and prescribing the medicine, as they understood that culturally the root cause of the illness was more than what we could see from an Eurocentric vantage, and hence just the medicine alone was not sufficient. Therefore, how can the Western medical system even be considered as the gold standard when it's clearly devoid of acknowledging this huge extra hemisphere? I mean, this is also validated by the diagnosis of Foster, who, having studied non-Western medical etiologies, correctly identifies that in the naturalistic system, the patient identifies predominantly the symptoms of their illness. I mean, another question is identified by White in 1997, is that we have the right to a hit-and-run sort of style of field work. Well, do we have a right to such a hit-and-run style of field work without actually going there and establishing some sort of long-term system of medical integration within these societies, and as we talked about earlier, actually building on these bodies of knowledge out there? Furthermore, would we not naturally consider it unethical to not provide support to people who need it? And in a free market, when we're offering something to someone, they have the freedom of choice to accept it or not. Giving them the option could not be considered unethical. In fact, the contrary stands, and so far as holding something from someone because we feel that they're not capable of understanding it is more morally corrupt. I mean, thinking beyond, we cannot have this sort of Western bottom-up approach that sort of human bodies adhere to the same universal global rules as well, when clearly there are ethnographies globally that prove that there is experiences differing to what we would have as our sort of Western standards. So we need to look from a more anthropological vantage when looking at sort of Western views on medicine. Anne Gold, citing Ellison's essay in 1992, looks at his sort of very ethnocentric approach to identifying the value of endomedical approaches to healing, as he calls it, or as they call it, and the need to understand them within the context of their culture. I mean, this is an idea supported by innumerable names, some listed by Gold on sort of page 14. Her recording of Gilbert Lewis helps us to understand the difficulty in identifying actually what is and what is not appropriate. I mean, as a medically qualified individual who simply wanted to sort of study society, he was struggling with the same sort of tussle of what is culturally appropriate or not. We must be careful, obviously, naturally, to avoid the sort of symbolic assault that can take place. And we did see with the smallpox incident in India, identified by Marline, or with the Peruvian Kashanui, with Kissinger, or Kensinger, who also had an issue in administering smallpox vaccines. Or again, when you're reading the idea of sort of destroying the cultural symbolism of the sort of the womb-like flower in Southeast Asia. So there are lots of reasons why we have to be very careful when we're examining or looking at sort of the value of Western approaches, and that really ties back into looking at the value of the different approaches to healing and thinking based on those other tenets that we are not considering within the Western Hemisphere or biomedical hemisphere, being the magic, the witchcraft, and the religion. And although we haven't touched necessarily on those words very much specifically, they are very much those things that are ignored by our Western science. They are those things that are within that sort of personalistic realm that is very much considered, as we discussed, by these other cultures which have been studied through a multitude of etymologies. So actually there is a lot of value clearly to healing looking at other advantages, and if anything we should have to say that the European and Western approach is clearly unfulfilled insofar as there is a part missing, there is a third paradigm, there is another, it's a duality, and there is something there that is not missing, or that is not present, that is being acknowledged by other healers, that is shamans, witch doctors, that is the connection to the spiritual world, the supernatural, the things that maybe we are quite quick to dismiss in our sort of scientific Western lives. Anyway, I think I've harped on more than enough about these topics and things. I'm sure you have lots of questions, so fire away. Cheers. I'm sitting over here.